Hello and welcome to the webinar. This is already the 25th webinar from the Zebra BI webinar series, and this time we're presenting Power BI for business analysts. A special format today, an hour and a half deep down expert session with the Zebra BI visuals, a specialized topic for business analysts today. I'm very happy that we are doing this today in a slightly different format. There will be time for questions during the session and also at the end. And let me give you an idea of what we are going to tackle today. This is a typical Power BI dashboard, and as a business analyst, you're probably dealing with data sets, maybe similar data sets like this. This is a sales dashboard with sales data set that has different dimensions, different data fields. We have a breakdown of sales by geography, by month, of course, by time. So obviously there's some sort of a calendar here behind in this model. We have product categories, product subcategories, products, customers, customer segments, and so on. So it's a typical sales dashboard, but does it really get the message across? Is it understandable? Is it actionable? If this is a sales for a certain period of time here, can you answer certain basic questions about the sales situation, about the sales performance here? Very trivial question. Is my sales performance good or bad? It's hard to say. It's hard to say, although I have all the breakdowns by geography, by product categories, and so on, although I have almost all the information here, I cannot answer this trivial question. Is my sales performance good or bad? Yes or no? We really can't tell. Why? The key problem here, there's no comparison to previous year, no comparison to plan, and so on. There's no context of my sales here. So if I cannot observe the variances, if I cannot really compare the the categories in my data and so on, if I can't do that visually, if I can't do this in a simple visual way, then your dashboards will fail. And second question, how good, how bad, right? Is it on the target? Is it above the target? Is it like, oh, only half of the plan or something like that? You know, I don't really know. I have no idea. And why is the sales performance as it is? Again, I don't know. I don't have this actionable information that will tell me, all right, you're like 30% below the plan, and this is why, and you should focus on this attention, and this is what you're going to do about it. So these are the key 4 questions that are like a litmus test for your dashboards and reports. If you can answer those 4 questions fast for any report page or a dashboard page that you're building in Power BI, then your dashboards, your reports will be understandable and will be also actionable, right? This is not the case in this particular example here. So that's why we'll try to equip you today with a few tools that every business analyst should like add to the business analyst's toolbox. So hopefully our session today will, give you some ideas, some skills, and some examples and best practices that you'll be able to implement in Power BI in order to create better dashboards, meaning more understandable, more actionable. So let's talk about the business analysts toolbox. So what are actually the tools that every business analyst should deploy in Power BI in order to deliver better reports and dashboards? All right, number 1, advanced charts. So Power BI has a lot of visuals. It has everything from pie charts to tree maps and map visualizations and column charts and clustered column charts and stack charts and so on and so on and so on. But it does not really offer advanced business charts. Charts where you can simply compare actual to plan or actual to forecast or actual to previous year, which is a basic requirement in any business analysis, right? So we'll dive into advanced business charts, charts which will enable you to perform variance analysis, which is, the second, I would say, essential tool in your toolbox. Clear and understandable variance analysis is probably 50% of every business dashboard or a report that you're creating. Next, not just simple charts, not just simple filters like you have in Power BI, where you can do like, all right, you can filter top 5 elements, for example, by value. You can do that in Power BI, but you can't really do things like top n plus others, where you have like top 6 or top 5 or top 10 elements, and then you also have this little element called the others here, which if you add to your top elements will actually represent the whole, like all of your revenue together, right? So this is an important little tool that you should deploy in your dashboards, but it's really hard to do in Power BI. So it actually takes some more complicated DAX that you have to build into your model in Power BI in order to deliver that. So we'll talk about this. We'll talk about waterfall charts, especially bridge charts. Also bridge charts with top N, where you're not just displaying all of the elements, just shoving all of your customers and so on into bridge charts, but actually making sure that you're rendering the most important changes, the most important elements that contributed either positively or negatively to your total result. And then if you're able to create a nice bridge chart with top N elements, either positive or negative, in a nice waterfall chart, this is a great business analysis that you can take advantage of in many Power BI dashboards and reports. Of course, tables, but not just simple basic tables or matrices. In Power BI, what serious business analyst needs are clear tables with variances, clear tables with several groups. Like, for example, you need to be able to present monthly results or month-to-date results for a particular period, like particular month. And then the next group in your table, which presents the year-to-date results, and possibly, hopefully, also another group in the end in your table where you're presenting full-year results. And then, of course, in full-year results, you should present forecast versus plan, whereas in the current period, you're probably presenting actuals versus plan. All right, so these are small little challenges in Power BI, and sometimes, even though we're all accustomed to reports like that, we had them in Excel and in other tools, right? And then we struggle to create them in Power BI. So today I'll show you how to do it in a quite a straightforward way, I hope. And to continue, next things that you need as a business analyst, if you're presenting income statements, P&Ls, or similar calculations like price calculations, like pocket price calculations and target price calculations, things like that, then you need additional tools like vertical waterfall charts that we call calculation charts. So this is a very interesting example, and it's quite a challenging one because the P&Ls and income statements have mixed data sets consisting of good KPIs like revenue and then bad KPIs like costs, expenses that need to be subtracted, and then you have the subtotals, and then it can get quite complicated. Next, more waterfall charts. Let's call them bridge charts with subtotals. Where you have an intermediate result, and then you have another result, and you're trying to show the bridge. You're trying to explain how a certain value, a typical example would be EBIT or EBITDA, how it changes and what are the causes for a certain specific change in your EBIT, for example. So this is a very typical business analysis here. So again, you need waterfall charts with subtotals and very flexible way how to present them and how to calculate them. More top and functions. We'll take a look at top and bottom and analysis with the automatic others row, and then moving on, we will add forecasts to our reports and dashboards, because too often in Power BI, as well as in other tools, the business performance solutions are focusing on data that is already in the past. So we are like looking in this rear mirror, right? Always looking into the past, but we forget that actually in reporting we should also look into the future. So what is going to happen? So you should bring your forecasts, estimations, latest estimates, and so on into Power BI, and you should be able to present them very clearly in your reports and dashboards. All right, then in the end, we'll also tackle the price volume mix variance analysis, how to do it, how to present it in Power BI, and my personal favorite, as always, the small multiples, right? So not just do that, for one element, just for the totals, just present one big simple chart, present multiple charts, because this is where the insight actually lies. The power of data visualization is in the small multiples, in the ability to present more information, in the ability to increase your information density. All right, so okay, these are the little pieces, little tools in your business analyst toolbox. So today in my session, I will try to explain how to put them, put them to life, how to put them in practice in reports and dashboards through a lot of examples, a lot of dashboards and reports that many of world's best, biggest companies are actually using in their monthly, daily, weekly, quarterly, annual, and so on reports and dashboards in Power BI. My name is Andrej Lapajne, so I'm the founder at Zebra BI. I'm a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional. My specialty is data visualization. I've been a consultant for 20+ years, implementing reporting systems, planning systems, OLAP systems, and so on. And lately I'm focusing on Power BI. And I'm also an IBCS, a certified IBCS consultant. And I will explain what IBCS stands for. It's a very important acronym that actually it's a kind of a standard actually that and a really good set of recommendations that lies behind what I'm presenting today. And I'm not alone today. Actually, today our CTO Mitja Bezenšek is with us. Oh, hi Mitja.
Hello everyone.
Please present yourself. Mitja is doing this today with me, so he will help with all the questions and so on.
Yeah, I'm Mitya. I'm the CTO. So for any technical questions that you have with regards to our visuals or with regards to webinar, just ask us a question. I'll try to answer it. And maybe if we have the time, I will ask Andrej to demonstrate some of the things because we already got a few questions. How do you do others? How do you do percents together with currency values in the same table? So I'm collecting your questions, so keep them coming and we'll try to answer them.
Great, Mitya, thanks. Oh, these are already great questions. So hopefully I'll present some of them in my session, but we'll do a couple of Q&A sessions during the webinar. So we have more than enough time today. So as I mentioned, a special session today. It's 1 hour session plus 30 minutes Q&A. So we have enough time. We covered the business analysts toolbox quickly. Next, I'll dive into some best practice examples from sales, P&Ls, price volume mix, and some financial reports. I will show how to implement this in Power BI with the Zebra BI custom visuals. And we, of course, will share all the resources and download links. So all the PBIX files that I'm going to present today are already actually uploaded. So we'll share the link at the end of the webinar and the Q&A session. And yes, we are recording the webinar, so the recording will be available in 2 days. All right, let's dive in. Let's start with some tables and some charts. Okay, first you need to get your tables and your charts right in Power BI. So let me switch to my Power BI, my first Power BI example, which is a sales dashboard. Those who are following us have already seen this dashboard. And let's dive. So this is a landing page of this dashboard that presents some some high-level information like actual versus plan for my revenue for a certain period of time. It has some monthly trends here and some tables and so on. But let's first dive into one of the reports, one of the report pages here. So I'll just click here to dive into my detailed page. I have a couple of pages here presenting the breakdown of my sales. Actually, it's the revenue here, and I can even switch to gross profit and so on. So I have certain slicers here that affect the whole page. Okay, so now first let's talk about tables and charts. Your basic and first tools in your business analyst toolbox. Shall we start with the tables? All right, I typically start with charts, but let's try to recreate this example in Power BI. I will just remove this, and I will also remove this table here. Okay, so these were just 2 visuals, all right, with a lot of information, but just 2 visuals. And let's try to recreate this example. This time I will start with the tables, and I will use the Zebra BI tables visual. So let me include this. We'll share how to get the visuals as well. They are on the Microsoft App Source, and you can import them directly into your Power BI. So the Zebra BI tables will render some measures. So in my case, now I'm showing the revenue. So this is my total revenue. I'll do a breakdown by a business unit, by a group of business units here. So, all right, this is a simple split, a group by. So first of all, when you're doing this, do not use things like this. Don't do this. If you have a breakdown, which we call a structure breakdown. So this is not time series. These are not month or something. This is a breakdown by a business unit, okay? So if you have a data field that is not time, then turn your charts around like this, okay? So in Power BI, this works. This is a nice breakdown here by a business unit. But now the problem starts. So you can do this with simple measures in native Power BI visuals. However, what happens if you want to present a comparison to plan? All right. So the variance analysis now. The variance to plan. Most people would do things like this. All right. So now I have my actuals and I have my plan for the, for all of my business units, and all right, I have all this information, but whatever I do here, I can make the chart bigger or smaller, I can try to set certain settings and so on. The problem of those basic side-by-side charts is that you are not explicitly visualizing the gaps. Visualizing the gaps here. So what is actually important is, okay, how much is the value, so that I understand which is the biggest business unit and the second biggest and so on, right? But then also this gap, are we achieving the plan or not? And exactly for how much? Is this like 10%, 5%? Is it better or worse than plan? It's really hard to say if you always have just those two colors here, right? So let's switch back to Zebra BI tables visual, which actually does this for you. So if I switch to Zebra BI here, sorry, okay. So you see what happens here. My computer is very slow. Hopefully this will work. So instead of just having, one chart that gets wider and narrower, okay, I actually have a visual that responds to the space available, and will always present the comparison between actual and plan. All right, since this is since I actually used a measure for the plan, now the Zebra BI visual actually has oops, I'm too fast for this. Okay, so I actually now I have just moved the measure into the plan placeholder. Namely, Zebra BI has more buckets for your measures, because it can distinguish between the normal values like just actuals and the previous year values and the plan and forecasts, which is quite important in any kind of business analysis. So okay, this is now the comparison to plan. And as you see here, I understand that baby care is my biggest business unit, but at the same time, it is below the plan. How much? Exactly 12.4K euros or something, right? Now, if I make this bigger, what happens is that I don't just get a bigger chart here, a bigger chart. I actually presented the information in multiple columns. Okay, so what I can do now is I can simply click to sort by the absolute variance. So this is the explicit variance to plan. I can sort descending. I can sort by the relative variance, okay, like this or like this, to identify which are the problematic, business units. Obviously, something is going on in this mobile business unit. So this is where my action should be, and this is now where the point where I should like drill down or something like that. So let's actually add some more data for the drill down. What you typically would do in a table is you would first start building a hierarchy. Okay, so when you're building a hierarchy, you simply add multiple fields, and then users will expand and collapse the tables to get the details. Of course, this can get quite complex. There's no limitation in Power BI in terms of data fields here, so you can add, also in Zebra BI, of course, you can add multiple fields like this. All right. Now you also see another thing here. The Zebra BI visuals the basic version of Zebra BI Visuals is free. So everything that I was doing so far is actually available in the free version. But since I'll be using a few advanced features today, I will actually add a license key. You can get a 30-day free license key also to just test the advanced features as well. So now I'm allowed to do more things like adding multiple fields here. Okay, and right click to collapse the whole field and something. So my recommendation here would be in the initial view, you know, expose the first and maybe first two levels. All right, so first two levels is a good default in reports. So you know, just try to provide maybe up to two levels here, and then the user will simply click to, you know, to drill down. All right, so that's very, very simple. Okay, so the hierarchy in columns, this is one thing. Next thing would be a typical report, a typical table-based report would have multiple comparisons, right? So now I have the comparison actual versus plan. I can, of course, also add a measure for the previous year. And now I've got multiple columns here. All right, what's going on? Now I have the previous year column, I have the actual column, and I have my plan. All right, these are the values. And then in between previous year and actual, I have my variance to previous year. So my growth from previous year, my growth from previous year in percent here. And then on the right side, I have the comparison to plan. So I have the absolute variance to plan, relative variance to plan. Now, in your reporting, you probably have a standard or you know, let's say a standard structure of your columns. Maybe you're used to reporting first the actual values, and you know, like previous year actual plan, so the currency values like this, and then you know, on the right side of your table you would have all the variances, and sometimes you would put the absolute variances together, and then in the end you would report on the previous year, so the percentage variances, the relative variances. This is you know, all possible in Zebra BI. Next thing is the final design of the table. So in Zebra BI, you can actually switch the visualization in each individual column. So for example, now I have just collapsed the chart for the relative variances into a simple you know, value column with numbers. I can do the same here if I want to keep my tables slightly more, you know, slightly more clean like this. Okay. And sometimes you can even hide certain columns. If you don't need all of the measures in your tables, then just simply, you know, click here on this down arrow and hide the column. That's it. And now it's hidden. It's still there. It's still in the table. That's why I still have the variance to previous year here, right? I just decided that I will not show you know, the whole number for the previous year here in this particular example, right? Sometimes you don't need this, or you know, sometimes you would just need the absolute variances, so you can hide the relative ones, or the other way around, you would show the previous year percent value, so the relative value, and hide the absolute variance. So you have all the options here. And then again, if you decide to do that, then maybe you want to focus on the you know, the actual relative variances. And in this case, you know, you can actually collapse this, show the absolute variance as numbers, and then the relative, the percentages in charts, right? So you have all this flexibility in Zebra BI, and these are the basic variance tables. It is important in tables. It's important that they are readable. So you know, you need to make sure that you have enough space for the for the charts and so on. So one thing that we actually have in Zebra BI that will help you control this experience is, if I now just switch the chart back here and the previous year. So for example, if I have a more complex example here, now when I make the visual more narrow, what happens here is that the charts will automatically collapse into, so they're basically responsive. This is what we call responsive visualization. And if you want to have smaller charts so that they don't change into columns, right, then you can set a setting which is called minimum chart width. All right, so if you're not familiar with this setting here, this setting actually controls this experience. So if you set this to a smaller number like 80, this would mean that the chart will be rendered up to 80 pixels. So if minimum 80 pixels is available in a column for the chart, then the chart will actually be rendered. So if this number is smaller, like 80 pixels, now the charts will get very, very small before they will finally collapse into collapse into a number column, right? So of course, if you make this number too small, then charts will be very squeezed. So make sure that you hit like the right balance here. All right, let's move on. What else do you do in tables, in variance tables? Let me create another example. This time I'll just throw out the previous year, and instead of having all this okay, I'll keep a simple hierarchy here in my rows, but what is the next step typically in a table in business reports is that you start building your hierarchies in columns. So for example, here in my case here, I have this slicer that allows me to change the results from month to year-to-date value. Okay, so now this is the year-to-date value. It's obviously 4.3 million January to October, and the single month here, only October, is like 300 and something K, right? So I have this slicer here. This is a nice slicer, and we have talked about this in a couple of webinars before. So I'll share the links where we actually explain this. But this time I will delete this slicer. So now I'm showing October results, and instead of having this option to switch between month and the year-to-date, I will actually add both the year-to-date and monthly results in the same table by using the group functionality in Power BI. So Power BI does have this group functionality, and the Zebra BI visuals support this. So if I take my period calculations, the data field that holds all of these period options, and put them into the group placeholder. So this group placeholder here, okay, what I get multiple groups in my table, multiple groups in my Power BI table, Zebra BI table. So I have the monthly results here, and then I have the year-to-date results. Okay, so this is a nice way how to present both monthly and year-to-date results in one table in only one single visual. Okay, and this is a nice way because this will also be quite fast, because if you can put more information into one visual, then behind the scenes Power BI also triggers just one query. And this is much faster than having a lot of separate visuals to present different parts and different elements and different groups of information, let's call them that. Okay, so it's nice if you can put them in one visual, will perform faster. A similar idea, instead of using month versus year to date in your tables, you can do what we call just time tables, where you simply put certain elements from your calendar dimension. So now it's important that you have a good calendar information in your Power BI model, and then if you do, then you can for example, take your quarters and just put them into this group placeholder. And the grouping, always what the grouping does is, all right, now I already have this filter for the October, so that's why I'm only seeing the Q4 here. I'll just delete this slicer again. And what I got here is the analysis with all the quarters. Okay, so now I have the Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, right? Very simple in one single visual that has this column structure. And now within each quarter, I have, you see, all my columns, and I can again reshuffle them around, or if I don't have the space. Now, of course, if you put a lot of elements in your columns, and you know, you start building your hierarchies in your columns, then you will need to sort of, you know, save the space in multiple ways. So this is quite important that you keep things clean, that you don't waste unnecessary space. You know, so for example, I will just show the absolute variances here. Another thing that you can do in Zebra BI, and also I guess in native Power BI, of course, is that you can clean the data labels, clean the display of data labels. So don't just, you know, leave the defaults. Especially in Zebra BI, Zebra BI has a lot of options to control data labels. So I have a lot of, you have complete control. So for example, in my case, if most of your values are in thousands, right, then you should actually choose to display the numbers. So display everything in thousands, but then show, instead of showing this K letter in your you know, numbers, just display it in a title. So this is something that Zebra BI tables supports. So now here in my title, I have it says in K, because the whole visual now shows data in K, in thousands, and the result, cleaner numbers, cleaner values, so it's more legible, it's easier to read, it's easier on the eye, and the columns are more narrow, and simply you can present more information and it's more clean. Okay, so make sure you think about the units. Most typically in business reporting, you will present in thousands, millions, billions, right? Especially this is currency, like the revenue. All right, what's next? Now, if you have quarters, you're probably interested in showing the total as well, like the grand total. Okay, so in Zebra BI, you simply go here on this little plus icon, and just choose the show grand total, and the grand total is here. It is marked grand total. You can actually rename it. So, you know, if you want to change this to some local language or something, or you can actually write like full year, something like that. Okay, this is how you rename it. Okay, you rename it directly on the visual, and like what I would probably do here is I would probably hide the plan here, so I have the most important information, which is the actuals and what's the variance to plan. All right, and now you can actually present all the quarters and the full year. And what next? What's the next level? The next level would be to actually build a hierarchy in your groups as well, to add more fields into the group placeholder, which is possible. Also in Power BI, it is possible to do the multi-level grouping. So for example, if I just add the month here under my quarters, all right, this is now quite wild because I have all the months here and they are aggregated to my quarters. So what I can do now very easily in Zebra BI Visual is I can collapse Q1, Q2, Q3, for example, and then, you know, just leave the last quarter opened, something like that. And then I have also the full year. So this works really, really nicely. I have the quarter here and I can expand, and then I get the month. Okay. Whenever you have at least 2 levels in the Zebra BI table, then you can also show the subtotals. All right, this is also possible. So if you choose to show the subtotals, what are the subtotals now? Well, in this case, they are just the subtotals for the quarters. So I have the subtotals for the quarters, and then in the end, I have the grand total for the full year. And you can actually rename each individual subtotal as well. So for example, in this case here, I could choose to just rename this to Q1, which is probably more understandable here, so that you don't have this total, subtotal, and so on, right? So, okay, this was a quick run through of the tables, I would say. So hierarchies, variances. Hopefully this made sense. Mitya, do we have some questions so far related to what I have shown right now?
Yeah, we have some questions. For example, can I show the variance versus plan as a percent of plan instead of increase or decrease in plan? So I think this is our relative variance column.
Yes.
So I think it's already there. I'm not sure if that answers the question of the.
Yeah, this is the relative variance. Only if I understood the question correctly, the question was if it's possible. So instead of presenting in the plus minus notation, so meaning plus 2.2% and like minus 9%, is it possible to display this in like this would be then 102.2%. And here, instead of minus 9%, so like we are 9% below the plan, we would actually show like 91% here, or like 90.4%, right? So so the Zebra BI does not have a special function for that. We always display relative variances and also the absolute variances in this plus minus notation, because it has at least 5 advantages over that notation in like calculating the index. The obvious one is it's more intuitive. You typically would say, oh, we are 5% below the plan or above the plan or versus previous year and so on. So it's more intuitive. And then, of course, you can present this in a chart, in a meaningful plus minus chart like this. So it's visually, it's better to visualize it in this way. But sometimes you do need this. Especially, for example, if in project management, for example, if you're tracking, how much percent of something of the budget or something, it's already like consumed or something like that, and you would like to have the index. If you have such I don't have the information here, but I will show another example. So we don't have a special function for that, but you can add your own index. So you can calculate the index here, and then just add this index into the values placeholder, because here in the values placeholder you can add more measures. So this is what we call custom calculated columns. So you calculate your index and then just put it into the values bucket here, and it will appear as an additional measure. Okay, so any kind of custom calculations, you can simply add them here. I will show an example with the P&L. In fact, let's do this right now. I can just show.
Yeah, we actually had a question about exactly this.
Okay, great,
so
perfect.
How do we show both dollars and percent in the same table? So, for example, EBITDA in dollars and then percent of revenue. How do you calculate it and format it?
I have it right here, Mitya. Great question. So this is exactly what I wanted to show here. So this is a very similar example, or probably exactly the same example. So I'm having the actuals and previous year values, and then these are all the calculated columns that are calculated in Zebra BI. So I will just remove this percentage so far. So this will be a typical, previous year actual and the variances. So far, I only have my actual value and my previous year value. Then I want to add this percentage. So what I can do is I can simply calculate this percentage. Well, let me just check which measure actually this is. So for example, the percent of revenue, which I calculated in my DAX. So if you need any kind of DAX here, we will provide the download link to PBIX files with all the formulas and so on. So you can simply download all the files and actually also see how this is calculated as a percentage. So once you have your measure, just take this measure, take this measure and put it into the values placeholder on this second place here. You see? So you can add up to 10 custom calculated measures in this version now. So in one of our next updates, we will allow up to 20 custom calculated measures like that. Okay. So what happened? This percent of revenue is simply added to my table, and it behaves like a standard Zebra BI column. So you can actually move them around. So you can have the actuals and then the percentage and then the variances, or you can put it here at the end, and you can you have further options how to visualize it. You see I have some borders around and so on. So you can actually individualize the design of each individual column, sets a certain backgrounds, and so on, right? So like if I do this, you see, so you can actually you can actually design individually those elements. All right, so it's another good idea to sort the to use custom sort in. So you actually need in an income statement you need a fixed sort of elements. So you should use the sort in Power BI. So I'll get back to this example. All right, any other questions?
Yeah, let me check. So there was a question, how do you unhide the columns after you hide it?
Okay, I think I did show this. So if you hide a column like that, just hover with your mouse in the area of the headers, right? And then you will see this little plus icon here. So if I enlarge this, just see this little plus icon. Oh, click to open, and then you will see a list of all the hidden columns, also of all the subtotals and grand totals that you haven't already added to your tables. And then this is how you then add the column back. So just click here and click, and now the plan goes back to my table. All right, one little detail here before I switch to charts and other things. The Zebra BI tables allow you to design two views. All right. So this view, the first view, is kind of called the chart view, which is more visual. And then if you switch here, you can design an additional view. All right, which we call the table view. So this is also one best practice that I would typically encourage. That you first have a more visual view with less columns. All right, so this is why it makes sense, to hide certain columns, just on the first page, and then people will focus their attention on the most important information, like the deltas and so on. And then, but still, people always want to read all the numbers, and they want to have the full tables and so on. So this is a really nice compromise. Show the visual, the visual design first, and then people will simply click here, and they will have all the all the values in this table view, right? So you simply need to tell them that they need to click here on this so-called chart slider in Zebra BI. Okay, so this is a nice trick that I always recommend. All right, let's move on. And I will remove the tables now, and let's talk about charts and variance analysis in a monthly trends and in like the time series. So typically you always in reports and dashboards you have a situation where you need to present like, all right, actual versus previous year or versus plan or both. But this time, sorry, I'll switch to charts. All right, these are now the ZeroBI charts. So I'll do a breakdown by month. So now I have a time series. Okay, so this is a different situation now. Whenever you have a time series, use charts with horizontal axis. Time should run left to right. So and yeah, you see what happens in contrast to the native Power BI visual. So if you try to do this in Power BI visual. Okay, so this is actual versus then breakdown by month. All right, this is okay. It's a simple column chart, so it's just a breakdown by month. But what happens when you want to do a comparison to plan or to previous year? Okay, this is not a good idea to stack plan on top of that. So typically, yeah, people would do it like this. And again, I have the same problem, right? So I have the actuals, I have the previous year, and the gap is not visualized. I don't have the labels, so I need to fiddle around with the settings and so on. But whatever you do, even if you manage to somehow get the right labels and things in place, this will still be just a normal side-by-side chart. So if you make this chart bigger, you just get a bigger chart, right? So it's really problematic. So that's why ZeroBI works in a different way. So whenever you put, so if you're presenting just one measure, and sometimes you do have this, it's a completely valid thing. Like sometimes you would just present market share, for example, and you don't have a plan for that maybe, right? Or certain other measures that you have in HR reports and so on. So in this case, you'll just simply, communicate trends, and then you can do, instead of just having normal trends and so on, you can do things like this. So this is still just one measure, but it's a better chart because it just shows the comparison to the first point. Okay, so maybe this does not make sense for the revenue always, but it should make sense for the market shares, especially if you have, instead of the 12-month, if you would have 13-month, and you would have like a rolling 13-month, and then you would compare the market share to from December, for example, or from November to the previous year's November, right? So then this chart will make a lot of sense here. So you do get better options even if you have just one measure here. But more importantly, the variance analysis now in the charts. So see what happens if I add another measure for the previous year. ZeroBI will create a waterfall chart. So this is the basic bridge chart. Okay, this is the basic version of a waterfall chart where you have the total for the previous year, the total for actual. So we had 8.1 million last year, 8.8 million this year, and this is the growth rate from the previous year, which is already calculated here. So the relative variance from previous year is calculated. All the elements here are completely interactive. So if I click, I get the absolute variance. So this is 800 and something K. Click once again, I get absolute and relative variance like that. And yeah, you can just cut the axis, to like enlarge or to zoom into the variances. If you really want to just focus people on the variance. One little detail here, if you're like more new to ZeroBI, then I need to show you that you actually have, this is called the axis break. So you do have a lot of settings in ZeroBI, even though everything is like one click on the visual. You do have more advanced and further settings here in the settings area. So in the format painter. So one of them is the percent, like how much is the axis broken. So by default, this is 80%. But you can actually increase that, or actually, let's say decrease this. So if it's like 50%, it means that it's 50% cut. You're only showing 50% of this whole value of 8.8 million, for example. Everything else is like below the chart. And you can put this down, way down to 0 actually. So sorry, 0 means no cut, but you can increase it to, well, no, not 1000, but 100. My typing skills are a little problematic. So, all right. So 100% means that, you know, it's completely cut. So this means that you actually started your axis actually starts not with 0, but with, you know, the lowest possible value in your charts. Okay, so which means that in this case it's 100% cut, and what is left are the variances. So which means if you really want to show only the variances, then you can just cut the axis up to 100%. Normally by default it's 80%, and if you want to have true charts that don't lie in any case, then don't use the axis break. Just start your charts always with 0. So you have all the options here in Zebra BI. To get back to the variance analysis, this would probably be the most, you know, typical variance analysis. So this is the second chart that Zebra BI has, the column charts with the variances, but we also have area charts where the actual is compared to previous year, and also simple line charts with those little difference highlights indicating that the difference, like this. And in the column charts now, a couple of details here in the most common, you know, column chart. So this would be now the full chart. By default, this visual is responsive. Again, so if you only need very compressed information and you just need one small chart for your dashboard, you know, you will put it somewhere like that, and then you will put all, you know, multiple other visuals around it in your dashboard on a landing page, for example. Then make this chart small and make sure it's, you know, clean, and the labels, I would probably need to clean the labels also, and so on. And then you can let me do it like this. So now I can click here, just present, you know, just present the sales and the like the relative variance. Okay, look, like the most important information. If you don't have enough space, okay. If you do have more space, then you will make the chart bigger. But this time with Zebra BI, you will not just get a bigger chart like here in Power BI, right? You will actually get another chart. So Zebra BI will decide that it's enough space that it can actually calculate the relative percentages and show them in a separate chart, okay? And if you make this even bigger, now what happened is that also the absolute variances somehow jumped out of that first chart. So let me do this again. So if it's small like this, now the variances are inside the actual chart. So this is what we call the integrated variance chart, because the variances are integrated in the actuals, right? But when you make it bigger, like this, like this, like this, hop, now the charts, the variances like popped out, but they are still scaled, so, or let's say the y-axis is synchronized here. So the size of this gap, the height of this column of the variance is matches exactly, I mean, pixel perfect, exactly the gap between the actuals and the previous year here behind this column. So this little gray area behind the first column represents the previous year. All right. You see, and this is more meaningful. Of course, you have complete control over the layout of this chart. So you can, if you just want the integrated variance chart, you can just do it like this, and then you will always have this chart, no matter, you know, how big is it. By default, it's responsive, but then you have all the other combinations and so possible layouts, like actual with only the absolute variances. If you don't need the relative variances, then, you know, you can just simply choose this layout, or certain clients would use this, like have the actuals here at the bottom and then only the relative percentages at the top, only the relative variances at the top. So this is also possible. Okay, and now the next thing, next level in showing charts, and which is really, really important and extremely powerful. What happens if you add another field? Okay, so for example, let's again try to analyze our business groups. What happens if you want to put like my business groups here, business units, right? How do you do it, right? So maybe you try to do it here. You know, this is a native Power BI chart. So this is where Power BI actually just stops, right? So one limitation in Power BI is you cannot, if you already have a comparison, like actual and previous year, already doing this, then you cannot add multiple elements in this legend field. There's no way. So the only way is, all right, throw out the previous year. You don't have the comparison anymore. And now you can actually bring the group field here. And then what do you get? All right, in this case, this is a side-by-side chart. This is a really weird chart that does not tell you anything. So then most people would at this point, you know, switch to a stacked column chart, which again does not make a lot of sense. I mean, it's, you know, the stack chart only works if you have a really small number of series of groups here. So you don't actually see, the actual trends, and I don't have the comparison. So there's no way to put the comparison in. So the only way to do it in Power BI is maybe through some drill down. So if I put back my previous year measure and do it here, the only way to do it in Power BI is then to put the group here in the axis somehow. And now nothing happened, okay? But I do have this group inside the visual. So, you know, the people who are skilled enough in Power BI and actually know that there is such a thing as the drill down, right? We'll do this. And now, okay, now I get all the groups, but you see this, I mean, does it tell you anything? It's just completely useless, right? So that's why, let me just remove this. That's why the best possible way to do it is actually to do the small multiples. So if you do this now in Zebra BI, put the groups into the group placeholder, what happens is, let me make this bigger now. Now I have all the business units here in one visual. All right, let me switch back to my waterfall chart. You see, now I have all the business units in my visual. This is called the small multiples, and it's one of the most powerful data visualization methods out there. And it's really nicely implemented in Zebra BI, because now the scaling concept kicks in, because we have all the business units within the same visual. We can actually take proper care of the scaling, which is not possible in Power BI. Power BI does not have any kind of scaling concept, you know, to like coordinate different visuals between one another. There's simply no way how to do that in Power BI. So that's why we are rendering the small multiples within one visual in Zebra BI, which is also fast, because again, this is now just one query back to your database, and especially in direct query mode, this will run much faster than if you would have, you know, like 6 or 12 independent or 9 independent visuals for 9 charts, for example. All right, so this is now the visual. It's scaled, as you see, 2.5 million, 2.2 million. It's slightly smaller, but then you have certain elements, certain business units that are much smaller. So, which is good, because now I actually understand how important they are. How important is the growth here versus this one? But of course, if I want to see the details, what's going on within this business unit, then you simply click here, and we have this little handy, you know, zoom function that will just render this chart temporarily. You know, you can see, observe, analyze what's going on month by month, and just simply click and to close it, right? So it works in both worlds you know, are together. First you see the forest, and then you can look at the tree. Okay, now this method, the small multiples, will work if you have, you know, a limited, a nice number of elements. Like in my case, I have 9 business units, and you know, it's kind of nice. Also, first of all, the data labels, again, you would need to clean them up. So let's do this just quickly. I'll switch to thousands, and I'll display the units in my title. Just without the decimal places in this case. All right, and we do have another setting here called the density. So this is the data label density, which you can switch from auto to something like, for example, first, last, min, max. This will clean up the labels, and for each individual chart, Zebra will only show the labels for, you know, the most important, like the biggest contributing and the most negative elements right here. Of course, if you hover with your mouse, you will get all the details in the tooltip, right? But still, you will see the most important data labels here. And then more importantly, what you can do now is if you will have a different situation. So instead of those groups of business units, I'll add all of my business units into my grouping field. Okay, and now this is a realistic case where you have certain, you know, big elements that hold a lot of revenue and a lot of value, and then you have a lot of small, you know, really very, very small groups that are not so important. What do you do in this case? And this is now the moment where the top n plus others kicks in. Okay, this is the point where you should start filtering your information, making sure that you're displaying the most important information. And in Zebra BI, this would be the first option to switch the top n feature on. Now I'm showing top 10 items, maybe top 9 or maybe top 8. Okay, but this is not the simple Power BI filter that just filters the top 8 elements, because now you see here at the end, I have this others category. Okay, and this is now the sum of all the rest together. So all the small charts aggregated into the automatic others category, which is also shown. So this ensures that what I'm viewing right now is my whole business or my whole business units. And then you can also see what is the rest, right? What is the others? And if it's still a lot of value in the others, then this is the sign that you need to increase the number of items, right? Or in the other way around, you could maybe just decrease the number of levels, just show, you know, a few charts and then everything else as others. And then, you know, a little bit more of a design. So maybe you can turn on the grid. There's the grid and also the color of the grid and so on. So there are lots of design options here. And this is a nice report right there. So I think we can safely show a few more charts. So if charts are clean, then it's very, very safe. You can easily show 9 charts, 12 charts, 16 charts on one page, 20 charts on one single page. It's possible if they are clean. All right, and then you can do it like this. You can do it with line charts and so on, column charts and so on. All right, good. There's another way. There's another function here in the small multiples in Zebra BI. So this is something for you to explore. Try changing the layout to automatic. And this is probably the most smart function that we have. What it'll do is it'll actually try to save even more space. So in this case, my wearables business unit is so much bigger than the next 2 business units, that the next 2 business units are packed together in the same row. So you see, you get this split function that will actually render 2 charts in one cell. So this is beyond small multiples now, and it's really a nice function, especially if you have large differences between certain elements in your data sets, which is many times, just the nature of business, just the Pareto rule. And now what happens is, you see, now I can increase the number of items. Now I can show top 9 plus the others. So yeah, I saved enough space to squeeze another business unit into my visualization. And this is now a nice little report. It shows the trends for all the business units, and you can switch, you know, from revenue to gross profit and so on. Okay, now I would like to show a few more really advanced functions for business analysts. Mitja, any questions at this point? Any more questions regarding this?
Yeah, we had a lot of questions. Some
All
of
right.
them you already answered. So one question was, how does this look on a smartphone? Any best practices there?
Oh yeah, great question. It can look great on the smartphone, and I'll tell you the reason why. So if you have enough space, then you have this. Then you have the small multiples in, you know, several columns. Typically, you would have 3 or 4 or 5 or even more columns on a widescreen report designed for the desktop. When you're designing for the mobile, you will have narrow visuals. And look what happens. Zebra BI automatically, even while I'm moving my mouse, reorganizes the whole small multiple matrix. So instead of having a wide layout with multiple columns, I actually have a narrow layout with only one column that people will scroll down. And scrolling down is the most natural, you know, user experience for the mobile. So you can simply, you know, take this report. All right. So how do you design for a mobile? In Power BI, you actually need to switch switch to mobile view. I haven't done this for ages now. Where's the view for the mobile? Mobile layout, sorry. Sorry about this. And I have to say now, in the latest version of Power BI, so this is the major reason for you to upgrade to the June version. So this is June 2020 version of Power BI. The mobile, the design for the mobile layout is much better than it used to be. Microsoft has fixed this and has introduced a lot of improvements. So now the grid for the mobile design is smaller. You can overlap visuals one on top of another on the mobile layout. So it's great, it's perfect, and it works really nicely with Zebra BI. So let me take the Zebra BI charts, the small multiples here. I have them here from my desktop view. I'll just put it here, make it bigger. And you see, like I promised, it's all in the same, it's all in one column, and then people will just simply scroll down. That's it. It works. It works really nicely. And also, what is even better, even this experience, now I can't really show you, but even this experience of changing the charts, this experience of changing the charts like this one, the chart slider, you can do that on a mobile device. All right, so people can actually change charts in mobile apps. It works in iOS and Android. Good. Mitja, let's take one more question if there are at this point, and then I'll show some advanced features to close the session.
Yeah, so someone asked if there's an option to show like 2 dimensions in the group box, and we do allow that, the
Yes.
2D multiples.
Exactly. This is called the two-dimensional multiples or multi-dimensional multiples. It is possible. However, unfortunately, I must say, okay, now I will do this. And we had this function or working. So this is the question, right? What happens here? And what happens is that now what is it's? Oh, sorry. It will work, but now, first of all, you need to make sure that for this you have the basic, you have this And top N, you need to put top N to off. So you need to have this I'll just refer to default here. I actually don't know why I don't have this now. So I should get the two-dimensional view. So you know, one data field in columns and the other one in rows. So you get this two-dimensional matrix. Unfortunately, there is an issue with this, with the Microsoft Custom Visuals API, so that in the last few versions of Power BI, the labels are not correct here. So unfortunately, at the moment, this two-dimensional multiples are slightly broken, unfortunately, and we are in contact with Microsoft, and we hope that they will fix this in the you know, in one of the next versions of Power BI, and then this will work again as it should, right? So maybe temporarily I would actually not recommend that, but as soon as it's you know, working again, yeah, this is then a great feature. Then you can put your customer segments in columns and then product like product categories in your rows, right? Nice, really nice business analysis. All right. We have like a little bit more than 10 minutes today. So I would now like to show a couple of more advanced things for business analysts. All right. So this was the sales analysis up until now, more or less. Now I want you to know that the waterfall charts are very important in business analysis, right? And many times you will have the situation where you need subtotals. Like for example, here, I have a typical, like a EBIT bridge, right? So this is my EBIT from 2018, and this is, you know, the EBIT from, like, for example, this year. And now in between, I have all of my variances, like the variance for the sales, and, you know, you can have different elements that contribute to this part. But now, this is not the end of the analysis. For example, in this particular case, the currency conversion is very important. And because there's, you know, the changes of in the currency conversion also contributes to the, like, the final currency adjusted EBIT, which is here, right? So actually, I have like the business impact here, and then I also have the financial effect of my currency fluctuations, right? And this is a nice analysis in two parts, right? Now you have this sub result, and then you have the final result, which includes the currency fluctuations. This is a really, really nice way. Now, how do you do this in Zebra BI? This chart with multiple subtotals works in a slightly different way. The data that you prepare is actually all in one measure, right? This is now, it's all in one measure because this is a way how you can really have the full flexibility and full control over each and every element. Okay, so let me just show you how my data set actually looks like. I'll show it as a table here. All right, so see, it's a very simple, all right, hopefully I enlarged this now. And so basically I have a flat data set with all of my elements, including my first EBIT from the last year. Then I have all the changes which I calculated in my Power BI model. So in this case, you need to calculate all the fields yourself. You have your own custom calculations here for the changes. Then you have your next, you know, sub result, and then the final result. So the whole data set is already calculated in your table. You bring it into the Zebra BI charts visual here, and then go here on the axis, and by default, it will look like this. All right, okay, let me just, so this is how it will look when you will put your values here into, so you basically put your data set here, your accounts or your KPIs, you put them here. This is one field, and then the second one is the value, right? You will get this. So this is now one of the charts in the Zero BI charts visual. You see, of course, line charts and so on don't make any sense here. The only chart that really makes sense here is the waterfall chart, and this is it. And now you simply say, you go here, right click on the name of the element and mark it as a result. Okay, and now this one, in the end, typically you would have two results, the first and the last one, right? But in my case, all right, the story is not finished yet. So I have the fx change. This is a contribution. It stays like the change, but the last one, right click, mark it as a result. So you can mark any number of elements as a result, which means that you can have complex calculations with several, I mean, unlimited number of subtotals or sub-results here in this value. Plus, there's another way here, another thing here, you can also invert each individual column. So for example, normally everything will just be stacked. And now if you have certain elements that contribute in a negative way, like the costs, right? If the costs are growing, this actually should lower my EBIT, right? That's why I go here, the material costs, and just mark them with this invert function, and they will simply get inverted, and now everything is, the calculation is correct. All right, so this is how you build custom waterfall charts that first can have your custom calculated variances, not just simple, actual minus previous year or actual minus plan. You can calculate things like, the price changes, volume changes, and mixes, right? Which is a really nice analysis, the price volume mix analysis. And you can then present them in this waterfall chart, which I think is really nice because now you see, okay, what is the effect? This one, the prices actually went up slightly up in France, for example, but the volume of the sales went down, right? So even though the prices went up, but the volume went down, right? And then this situation is very good, right? And so on, right? So this is a nice analysis that shows the contribution of certain elements. So first, you can have your custom calculated variances. Second, you can have any number of subtotals. All right, this is a really nice business analysis that I think should be included in your Power BI dashboards and reports. Yeah, which basically brings me to one of my last examples that I have already shown. So this is the P&L. I've already shown how to add like the percent of revenue as a column here. Yeah, here very similar to what I have shown in the previous waterfall chart, you can do with the Zero BI tables for the P&Ls or P&Ls, income statements, or any kind of like price calculations, right? Because here you can do the same thing. This is product revenue, this is service and other revenue, and then this is now my total revenue. So this is my first subtotal, my first result that just simply adds product revenue and service revenue to my total revenue. So how did I do that? I right-clicked and marked this row as a result. You see? So, normally all the elements in a waterfall chart just get stacked one on top of the other. But if this is now a result, a subtotal here, just mark it as a result. And if this is a cost, then simply right-click and invert this row. This is what we call row level invert. So you can do this on the level of each individual row. So you have complete control, over the elements in your data sets. And this is how you can actually manage a more complex data set like a P&L, which is not just a normal data set. It's actually a collection of elements that are that have a positive meaning, or or have a negative meaning like costs, or there are some sort of subtotals and subresults and so on. And you can do that also in a hierarchy. I'm not sure if I have an example here. Hopefully I have it here. Yeah, okay. So this works, of course, also in a hierarchy, because typically income statements, you would have like 3 or 4 or 5 levels in your income statement, right? So you can, and this actually works quite nicely. So you can have a clean, like a clean short P&L, or maybe or even just the top KPIs, revenue, gross margin, and so on, and then people will start drilling down. So if I just open this part here in gross margin, I open it and I see the the cost of goods sold between revenue and so on, the product costs and service costs and so on, then operating expenses and so on. And in this way you can just simply drill down into multiple levels of the hierarchy. And one of our clients, who is I would say is the winner, they actually have 14 levels of hierarchy in their income statement. So this can get really complex. I wouldn't recommend 14 levels, but yeah, it's possible. All right. So, which brings me, I guess, let me check to the closely to the end of this session. Oh, the top n plus others. I have shown this in small multiples. Let me show you the top n plus others and the all right, this one. So the forecasts. Let me finish with the forecasts and this top n functionality. So I have shown how you can create the groups in tables and how to use them. Now, what happens if you have the situation where you need to present actual versus plan in a certain group, like for this month, and actual versus plan for the year to date, but then you have the full year and the full year is not ended, so you only have the forecast for the full year or for the rest of the year, right? So in this particular group, you need to compare forecast to plan. And in other groups, you compare actual to plan. All right, what do you do? Well, it's possible in Zebra BI as you see it, and I'll just explain the trick here. The trick is that you simply add all of the 3 measures. So you add your actual, forecast, and plan into the respective placeholders buckets here in Zebra BI. So my actual goes to the values, my plan is here in my plan, and my measure for the forecast is in the bucket for the forecast. So I have 3 columns here, and then simply go and say, all right, now I will hide the actual from my table, but not from the whole table. I will just hide the actual column from my full year group. All right, and this is again one little tiny feature in Zebra BI tables that is really, really powerful, because this is simply not possible in Power BI. This kind of flexibility, but you need that as a business analyst, right? So in this case, I will hide the forecast in the year to date, and I did the same here, right? And this is how you actually can customize the structure of columns for each individual group, right? Which gives you complete flexibility over the structure of tables. And this is how you bring your forecasts into tables. And how do you bring the forecast into charts? This is also one thing. So normally you would not have the forecast. So, you would have maybe charts like this. Quite strange, or like this, right? And 0 until or empty until the end of the year. But if you bring your forecast into the forecast field, now you have the view into the future for the rest of the year, and Zebra BI is smart enough to show the actuals up until the current month, and then for the rest of the year it will show the forecast. And this works now with all the charts in Zebra BI. So line charts, and my favorite ones, the waterfall chart. So you see I have actual minus plan up until April, and then for the rest of year, Zebra BI is using forecast minus plan. For this to work, only one thing is crucial. Let me show you the data. Okay, so you simply need to have your actuals for the rest of the year needs to be empty, or you put in null in Power BI model, right? And this is how Zebra BI will know, all right, there are no more actuals, so Zebra BI will automatically take the forecast. So the next month, when your data is updated, the May value will automatically be shown. You don't have to do anything. It's just a question of interpretation of data, which is done automatically in Zebra BI. All right, guys, I guess this brings my presentation to the end. Mitya, let's quickly take maybe one more question. We had a lot of questions during my presentation. So is anything really important left to explain, Mitya?
Yeah, there were a lot of questions about modeling. How do I get this to work with my data? I shared a link to our DEX webinar.
Exactly.
This is, I think, the best way to get started.
Yeah. Let me
So
show this.
one question that is related to modeling as well, can plan and forecast be in a related table, a separate table?
They can be. They can be. So the yes, they can be. They can be. I mean, these are different techniques now. Do you put them into one table, or do you have a separate table and then you relate this table? So, but it needs to be a fact table. So you have one table with the actuals as a fact table, and then you have a separate fact table for the plan or for the forecast, right? This is possible, although if possible, I would actually recommend to merge or join the tables together in Power Query, and then use one fact table. In most situations, I would actually recommend that because it will result in a simple star schema model, which is the fastest way how things work in Power BI. So this will be the fastest model if you can put it in one star schema, right? So this is my sales, and then I actually have separate measures for actual and plan. And actually, I don't really have this. To get a clear answer on this, let me just show you the resources here, because we do have a video with step-by-step instructions. Let me show you the our resources, right? So for further details on data modeling and on specific topics that I was presenting today, please go to Zebra BI website. And then under the resources, we have two really important resources. Number one, webinars, where we keep all the webinar recordings. Number two, Power BI examples, PBIX files, okay? So just go here, and for the webinars, you will see that we have 25 hours of recorded material, right? So this is the session I'm doing right now, but all the past recordings are here. And for the DAX, the modeling, the year-to-date switches, time intelligence, and so on, please take a look at this webinar. So it's really good, and it's all about the switches and how to use this and how to bring the plan and how to do the switch for multiple KPIs dynamically, right, on a page and things like that. So this is the webinar. And then for like income statements, you will find another webinar for details on income statements, on small multiples, and so on. So a lot of material is here. Also design sessions like Power BI themes, how to automate things with themes, and so on. So there's a lot of content here. And the other one is this one, Power BI examples, where you will find all the PBIX files that I have shown today. So you will see online reports and also the buttons to download the PBIX files, where you will find also DAX formulas and so on. So these were then the resources. Yeah, I invite you to import Zebra BI from the Microsoft App Source and start playing around if you haven't already. Get back to us. Zebra BI are Microsoft certified visuals. So they're meaning that they are secure and so on. They're used in a lot of big big clients, big customers around the world in different, parts of the globe and by different users. So I hope that this session today was insightful and have provided a lot of ideas for you to implement in the future. And together with the Zebra BI visuals, hopefully will make your reports and dashboards understandable and actionable.